Hello and welcome back to the Age of Sumbros YouTube channel. I'm your host, SerSharkDad here, and we have a bit of a special game for you. Usually I start the games when they're all already in the action and we're just going to flow right into the commentary, but this one requires a little bit of context. So I'm joined here by Platypus Slayer. And
Hey, how's it going, man?
yeah, it's going great. And you were advocating for this game simply because the backstory here is that there was some forum drama in which this gentleman here, is by the name of Juan, he was sort of advocating that Russia was weak simply because they could only build 7 blockhouses as opposed to however many barracks you get with a normal civilization or any other civilization, and that this was a travesty. And then he started to argue with a bunch of people where others were saying, no, that's not the reason. Like, we should change Russia completely and give them a bunch more blockhouses or whatever else you're advocating for. This devolved into 100 and something replies in which I think he called Garja bad at the game, and then said that Russia could not pull off a 14ville age up, which, as far as my understanding, is the standard. And
Correct.
like disagreed with like pro play and all these kinds of things. And eventually what ended up happening is that an individual who is around, I want to say 1350 to 1450 elo, decided to say, hey, I don't play Russia, let's do a mirror match and I'll show you that I could do a 14ville age up.
Right. I want to give, like, first off, a little bit of props to Juan for actually putting his money where his mouth is. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like a lot of people on the forums will make a passionate argument and then just kind of slink away when the gauntlet's thrown down. Where this guy, he's like, okay, I'll play. You know what I mean? He really wanted to try to demonstrate that his theories on Russia were correct. So I think that's really kind of admirable. But I also really like kind of Jordy's perspective of saying, like, metas exist for a reason, plays exist for a reason, builds exist for a reason. And I'm nothing special. I'm not like a huge professional guy, and I don't expect to see like perfection from him in this upcoming match. But I'm gonna just take a build with a civ I'm not familiar with and demonstrate to you why we do things in a certain way. Again, theory crafting is one of the best parts of Age of Empires 3, but one of the hardest things newer players struggle with is understanding why things are the way that they are for a reason. So I think today should be a fun little demonstration on why Russia almost always ages with 14 bills.
Or it will just be like just a fun thing to watch, like a little time capsule.
Right.
But really, the context is to point out that there's a bit of history here. On one side of the map, you have Juan, who is going to be what you would call a low elo legend. He seems to primarily play treaty, but his 1v1 supremacy elo score is, let's just say, below average. So let's just keep that in mind. And then when it comes to Jordy Garlee, he is above average in terms of elo. However, he is not really a Russian player. So if you're going to see some plays and you're like, what's going on? That's going to head that up as to exactly why that is the case. But let's go ahead and stop talking about it and just jump right into it. So we got Juan the Hunter here, who is our famous low elo legend in terms of, just going on the forums and arguing with everybody. He's over here in the south of the map. And we have Jordy Garlee, who is our challenger, sporting the red here on the north side of the map. This is a great, very abundant map, Platt. And I was just wondering, what are you hoping to see or thinking about what you would potentially see in a Russian mirror on this map?
Well, typically a Russian devolves into kind of like the initial Cossack waves, right? They kind of 14 age each other. They have kind of forward map control. And it's just kind of a match of who gets the units out first, right? Because, as you know, Russia's kind of weak to heavy cav. Russia does have a very good heavy cav shipment, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the 5 Cossacks. So these mirrors can be really quick and brutal, right? A lot of it's going to depend on the age up, the timing, but more importantly, the other guy's ability to, like, ship things and time things correctly.
Right. Right. Yeah. Maybe some really long H2 action, or you could see some really quick FF and just get right to the business of Falconets. We are truly unaware, but we will see what Juan is talking about in terms of how his gameplay is going to look like. And then versus Jordy Garley. So a little bit of treasure posturing here. Taking some of these cows. Juan's doing a pretty good job of just kind of scouting this out. A little bit of a friendly good luck, and then Juan just doing a yes. I'm not entirely sure if that's proper etiquette to just say yes when
Yeah,
somebody says good luck, but
to be fair, I mean, we don't know language and game and macroing in the second, right? Like in Age of Empires 3, have you ever had any issues knowing if someone was flaming you? Because I feel like our player base is very, very good at letting you know if they're in a spicy
oh,
mood.
I don't say any. My principle on this is saying absolutely nothing to my opponent, like whatsoever. I may hit you with a taunt 3 at the end of the game, but that's about it.
Exactly. So right off the bat, I'm noticing Juan has stopped making villagers.
Yeah, we're going to go for the 11 village. Let's go ahead and look at the deck. Distributive isn't coming in, which is stock standard, but this deck is not even a good tree deck, I would say. I'm not entirely sure. See, this is just one of those things where it's like you're going to need somebody to kind of come alongside you and kind of demonstrate to you as to exactly why you should be doing what you're doing. And hey, by the way, if you're looking at this, we do have a civilization spotlight on Russia, so in case you need a good deck and learning how to build a deck, we do have a video on that one. Just shameless plug. But this is one of those things where it's like you have a sort of like you're just kind of trying to figure it out on your own, and you don't have anybody there to kind of point you in the right direction. That's what
So
this looks
interesting.
like.
Exactly. Interesting. Is he going for a logistician, even though he's going for less vills? And see, already we've got some mistakes I think coming in here for Juan, because it's like if you're going to cut villagers, you want to age up faster, but if you're going logistician, you would have enough time to age maybe about 3:30 or up to 4 minutes, but have like 17 vills,
Right.
And have like what, there's 50% more eco, and still be able to get the stuff down. Now all you did was idle yourself on it, or just age up with 14, age up around. Can we go to Jordy real fast?
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look. So he is going to go quartermaster, actually. Okay. And his deck is pretty standard, I would say. Some things here and there that I can, you can go either way with. I think specifically these Merc shipments. And I know that this is starting to become a little bit more popular simply because of a line art video some time ago, but I don't really believe in it.
Guard Hussar, a good unit, it turns out. I just realized, though, it looks like, is Jordy also doing 11 Vil age up? What the
He's
heck?
also going 11 Vil age up, and his age up is coming in, around this. Yeah, it's not even that off in terms of time between the two of them. So once again, this is one of those things where it's like, I don't know, if he doesn't play Russia's start is actually quite difficult. If you go to the Russian Spotlight video, I have, I have somebody guiding me through that, and even I was, like, oh, this is kind of a weird, just that batch training kind of can throw you off for sure.
Absolutely. I think that Russia, even though it has kind of a reputation as quote unquote noob civ, right? The macro is so unforgiving for that civ, because you can't just queue a musketeer, you can't just queue a strelet, right? Like you have to have all the resources up front, and that could really make it difficult for newer players or people that are under pressure and miss macroing, right? Because you just can't do anything. You can't queue a vill, you can't make military, you're just totally stuck if you're not macroed right. And now, looking at it, I pointed out like the thing with the logistician being slower, right? That his blockhouse for Huan is just now coming out. By the time that Jordy's blockhouse, not only is his strelets being produced, but yep, his Cossacks are out.
Yeah,
Oh,
his
that looks like-
Cossacks.
did he
Yeah,
forget?
his Cossacks are. Yeah, his Cossacks are out. They're going to go ahead and take down that Explorer up there. This is interesting blockhouse placement. So we have a market already going down, but no market text being researched, right? We didn't macro for that coin and going for the hunting dogs and deciding, hey, this is a food intensive civ. We need to get those food upgrades. Now going to go with medicine. Very weird. Seems like a kind of a smattering of treaties in there. Strelet's getting into the action here. See if they can pick up the Vil. He's going to go ahead and blow. I also wanted to point out this blockhouse placement. This is one of those things where some good Cossack action. Oh, actually taking a Vil. Good job, and really good here on the Cossack fight. Good matchup. Going to go ahead and take those out. Jordy not doing any sort of fancy pull trick. Yeah, I don't think he has another unit that he can pull trick to. But one of those things that Blockhouse is, you have the tool of map control just automatically there for you. I mean, go ahead and put him down here, take control of that coin mine up, up here, take these hunts, to really spread them out. But here he's doing a good job putting a lot of good pressure on. I mean, a couple Vills already going down. This is great. But Porchik coming in.
Goes for the port. I like to call them porky sticks. These things are, But yeah, okay. Now the Cossacks are going to come. They're going to clean up the Strelet. So we're at what? We're at 14 Vills of Geordie. How much for Juan?
And 14.
So there you go. Just to give you an example, right, of the difficulties of macro is the fact that because again, Geordie aged up and continued to make some villagers right before he went.
Right.
His Vill loss is just equaled out basically. So even though now Juan has not only the weaker ego, but his army just got cleared.
Right. So still producing Vills and going for steel traps. I'm still wondering. He has not moved a dime on this coin gathering. So we have a market that's gone down, and then no text being researched. I never forget. Like I must have been around 1,000 and you looked at 1050, and Spree was watching a live stream of mine in the Discord, and this was like little things. You just got to be receptive and open to learning. He goes, "Oh, so you put down a market, but you plan on getting a tech?" It's like, yeah, I mean, you think about it, well, I need a market because I gotta get techs, I gotta trade resources, but just not doing it. Well, what are you doing? Things to think about.
I think that's exactly it. People sometimes we just do stuff, and that's where you get the insult name like a bot, right? Because
Right.
markets are good. I'm going to get a market, right? But it's
Right.
like if you're not researching the techs,
Yeah, what are you doing?
or you do, yeah, you're not gaining any benefit from it. I mean, it's not even like Age of Empires 2, where at least you could build like a house wall, market wall, and all that type of stuff. So now the rest kits are coming out. These should have probably been out earlier.
Yeah.
Again, I think Jordy making the Porchix was kind of a nice bend, but honestly, those things aren't very good. They're just
They're just kind of meh.
yeah.
But when it comes to Juan, we have another blockhouse, and we got a nice line of blockhouses here. Finally, Hunting Dog's now coming in, and he is training, like you said, the Recrut, which great looking unit, I think. Funny enough, actually, when the Recrut was actually introduced in the Russian military for conscription, they would actually serve, I believe it was life conscription, and then it wasn't reduced until later in the 18th century to 25 years. So pretty intense. Wow. Yeah, I know, it really sucked.
There's something too, I know that Juan's doing that. If you ever watches, again, you talk about map control and stuff. I feel like this is something that sometimes will work at lower elos, but once you start getting to people that know how to handle turtles, know how to handle rushes, right? He rushed them, he kind of failed on the rush. Now he's behind. You're playing as Russia too, which is kind of a tough civ to recover from a stall, but you've built these blockhouses, but now look at your huts. They're completely exposed. If those Cossacks go into Juan's hunt,
and then asking you shall receive, we're seeing a pretty good raid right here on the part of Geordie, and so he's now macroed up for his Fortress Age time, and he's got a really good raid here. He's gonna have to pull this army back, and then looking at Juan, making more Recrut, which is probably the right call, but just small things here, right? So one Vill gathering your 700 coin, and then you have 700 coin in the bank, but you do not. You got a bunch of idle, and you have nobody here gathering the food. Really, you did not macro for food prior to the sending of the 700 coin. So it's you got to send shipments with a purpose, right? You can't just send things out because the idea of it sounds good, but rather you have to be kind of timing it alongside.
Now he's sending the church. The church doesn't even give him anything right now.
Right.
He needs units, which I think his deck was kind of late. Geordie also getting units, but Geordie's aging up, which means this little smorgasbord or variety of units will all get veteran at once. So while you would hope to see a bigger army before the church would be cost effective, the idea behind that is a lot more solid. And I think what we're seeing here is we're seeing Geordie, as an average experienced player, so a slightly above on the ladder, but many years of experience, that kind of basic experience being put to the test, and raiding, defending, all these kind of things. And again, this guy's not perfect. He's not playing at 100% pro level or anything like that, but he's demonstrating on how, even in a mirror match with an unfamiliar civ, the experience that people get in this game does build a foundation that pays off.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And interesting going for a slow age up of the scout. And then on top of that, like you said, he did send the unique church card Reform his Czar. But, maybe he would even train my favorite unit that Russia has, which is the Counter Dragoon. So good. Another thing that I want to point out, too, is for Juan, like now we're macroed in terms of coin for 1,000, but we're training Vils and yet at the same time trying to get that food up. It's just an awkward macro place to be sitting in. And then, if you can, just take the time. Like if you're just kind of idling, like shoot this herd in. Like you just saw a raid coming in. Try to herd this back. You know what I mean? Like just little things like that to try to, just elevate the play just a little bit more, but kind of scaring off those Cossacks, which is good. And he's now got a nice batch of Strelitsy.
And remember, he had asked for this whole thing started because he said, you need more blockhouses. Like, if you think about it, you're building all these blockhouses. Well, you're not going to get any value out of them because look how the placement. Like, they're not controlling or defending anything. It's just like a random line.
Right. And then if we
and
see
now there's another okay, but not on your hunts.
Right. If it's just moved to the right a bit, like to right here, exactly where these Rec Rod are standing, then you actually have a pretty decent placement of a blockhouse.
All right. So now he's going to push, but
yep.
Your opponent just aged. I assume he's going to go for the
little hand battling. Juan needs to age up. He's already got it. Okay, now he's got it in queue, and he's going to go with the bishop, which is, I think, is just such a...
That's a bad call right now. Yeah. When your opponent's up in age, you need to go for extra. Now, Jordy can get away with it because I don't believe Juan has 2 Falcons. So as Russia, it's like, well, he's got no like haymaker cards, right? Because he has that weird, not weird, but that interesting deck, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no 2 Falcons. There's no Merc shipments, right? So in that case, yeah, go for the slow age up. But if you're behind and you're looking at Jordy's deck, which I believe has all the standard cards,
right?
You need to, exile. Yeah. You need to exile Prince.
Yes, you absolutely do. Okay, Church now going in, which is good. He's going to go ahead and start getting those techs. And, honestly, and even looking at Jordy, like, and I know we said, like, we gave his elo, and people are going to be like, well, this is not even, like, a sizable mass. Like, this is not, Juan can still, like, with a little bit more skill, like this is definitely something that can be handled. I think this is not necessarily a scary thing. Like the amount of numbers that Russia can put on the field in comparison to what we're seeing right here is it's a big difference.
Correct, right? Like usually Russia's play is a little bit more grindy, but again he did put a bunch of blockhouses out, and I think he made the right call. You already right to back off and wait till artillery because. This is why you could have 7 blockhouses or 14 blockhouses, and it won't matter in a competitive environment because, it does matter because it'll make your opponent just want to resign and uninstall Age of Empires 3 if he's just playing Stronghold all day. But the rest of the time, you just back off and boom. Like, you don't have to have a big army because your opponent's invested 1,000 wood into blockhouses that are going to get torn down by 2 Falcons.
Yeah, now we're gonna see that slow push that you're talking about. See, you don't really have to do much of anything. Just keep your anti-cav just kind of up and present, and just slow push those falconets into the blockhouses. And then looking over at Jordy again, I was kind of hoping he had a ton of macro for wood. I was really hoping for the counter dragoons, but I guess he was just doing that for housing, and then now has redistributed his Vils, which is pretty good. Looking over at Juan at this point, I would imagine. Okay, a chest of 1,000 coins. So this is me thinking that maybe you're going to go for a really risky industrial age play here. But then his macro, once again, all over the place, 20 Vils.
Also, look at the town center. This is, for new players, this is such a common thing. I get what you guys are thinking. It's like the basic arithmetic, right? You need to spread out those town centers because, again, it's all about map control. Like, you don't have any Vils with safe hunts, then as Russia, you're going to get bled out. It's just that simple. You need to have map control, and more importantly, you want to be choking out your opponent's access to resources. So your cost-effective army is just that much more ruthless.
Right. And also just taking advantage of your Vil production, right? So if you have another Vil factory over here, right, exploiting those natural resources. And that's one of those things, like Britain is also the same way. You have to control the natural resources just for a little bit longer than other civs have to. They really rely, just super food hungry. All right, so we're going to see this pretty big push here. I want to see quite a 11 Cossack, so 2 batch of Cossack, and into a lot of Streltsy. right now, and these are not upgraded. None of these are upgraded. He's not having the upgrades. And then now we're seeing a shipment of the Fenar allies, which I feel like is not a very common card.
No, it's solid, but the Boyars are pretty nice. I mean, they're basically like Opry Cossack hybrids. Juan now making coal, so give some credit to Juan for backing
A
up,
little
not
bit of
tricking his
lag.
units to death, right? Like that's a very common new player mistake.
Right, but now he's in trouble because he went
He was
logistician.
holding his army. Yeah. Oh, there goes his pop space. Yeah. Although it looks like Jordy now backing off, which again, probably a little bit overly cautious, but I would imagine.
Well, yeah, especially to go all the way back to your base is like a bit much.
Yeah.
Juan now sending in an upgrade card. He's sending in Strelic Combat, which I believe is an H3 card.
Oh, look at that. Is he going to get the culverin? Okay.
I don't think so. Oh, an expert Vil pull by Juan. I don't know if that was intentional, but
if that was, we're gonna give him some credit. We're gonna say, you know what,
we're gonna say he knew what he was up to. He's running this Culve around. See again, not one of these things. Click your Rec Rut, put him into melee. And now the Boyar now going to get stuck in. Going to go ahead and just grab that Culverin, and it is not long for this world. And 2 Falconets slamming into those Strelets, and that's the total wipe.
Yep. Even with the 2 towns, again, at this point, you could, even if you had 14 blockhouses, all Jordy would have to do is just back off. Taunt 21.
Oh boy. Okay, so it was kind of like a little bit of a cast and more of a, well, commentary of like, hey, this is what's wrong. This is what you're looking at. I think the thing is what gets me, and not to make this like a podcast episode, but you and I probably owe the fans a podcast episode at this point. I know you've been busy. But it's one of those things where I feel like a lot of people post things on social media. They go to a Discord, or they go to the Reddit, or they go to the forums, and they make some really strong statements. And this is kind of like a psychology thing, I would imagine, right? Is like they make some strong statements of like, this is what needs to happen with this Civ. This is what needs to happen with this game. But really where it's coming from is just a place of a personal frustration, and that they're not really utilizing the Civ in their personal gameplay to the fullest extent possible, or even to an average point when they're making those statements, because it's like saying, like, well, I'm not getting enough juice out of the squeeze. And you're not really even using like any sort of like tool for squeezing. You're just using your hand, you know what I mean? And it's like,
right,
you're not getting a lot out of it. And I think that's where that frustration comes in. And then I think the community itself gets a little offended when, somebody like Juan, like, hey, credit where credit's due. You came out, you had the game recorded, you fought somebody, we're casting it. Kudos to you, man. But also arguing in the forums and kind of like pushing up against that advice when people are trying to be helpful, it doesn't help us in terms of like kind of teaching people, spreading information, and helping the balance of the game.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things about Age of Empires 3, because I think you mentioned at one point he has like 1,200 hours in this game, right? And in your own bubble, all of your information may be completely valid, right? But Age of Empires 3 is this like huge game. Even though it's a small player base, it's a huge game,
yes,
right?
It is,
there's
yeah.
all these little pockets. There's little clans, little groups, and there's a lot of what we would call casual players. And you can spend a lot of time perfecting a meta versus like 5. If you play against 5 people, right? Your version of what the game is globally is going to be completely different versus like the ladder jockeys who are playing against totally different people day in and day out. Unless it's a slow day, then you're fighting the same guy 5 times. But even then, that's usually the next day it's somebody else. The next day it's somebody else, right? So like your strategies, your builds, your fundamentals, like they all have to kind of grow on each other. And a lot of the people in the forums, even though most, there's very few quote unquote pros in the forums, but a lot of it is people that have that global experience and that do spend the time researching new builds, do spend the time not improving their build, but learning builds for them to improve upon, right? And I think what we saw is a nice little kind of demonstration of that. If someone Jordy, who's like you said, this is not a guy trying to say, hey, cast this, I'm so great, blah blah blah. Like he was like, eh. But it's an interesting concept, right? Given the feedback that this, Juan was like, you have to do these things. Only noobs age up at this. Only noobs do this, right? And this guy who is a self-professed noob at Russia, but like an overall experienced player who's able to yeah, look at that. So he rushes with 11 vills and nothing gets done.
Right.
He has no
Right.
eco like to fall back on.
Right.
So he loses the game. Now, if you were at 14 vil, you would have aged up faster. You would have got your Cossacks out faster, which gives you more momentum. You would have had more economy to keep building units, right? Like, it just took total their example. Yeah, look at the resources gathered. And what's funny is Jordy himself also didn't age properly, but just because he knows how to defend a rush, he's fine. He
Right.
lost what, 3 vills even, and he still had better macro because he just had a lot easier time defending.
Yeah, there's just everything from the deck to macro to herding to intentions behind shipments, map control, understanding building placement, just playing with purpose, right? Every single decision you make, why am I making this decision? What is the reasoning behind it, and can I justify it? People will have different ideas about how to play the game, right? So people will debate 11 versus 14 versus 17 vil age up. People will debate first shipments. They'll debate second shipments, and that's all well and good. But as long as you can justify in your elo why you're making the decision that you're making and have that be effective, then that's all well and good. And I think just the intentionality behind the play is what's really missing. And I highly encourage Juan that, like, as you're kind of probably still battling with people in the forums, that you just take the time. Like, we do have a civilization spotlight for Russia. You can hop on the Discord, ask questions, play in house, so you're not risking elo at all. I still have tons of questions. I still need to kind of chop it up with people and kind of sharpen the axe every once in a while. So it's like, it's totally cool. It's and there are a lot of players like this. We maybe people who are watching this are like, oh my gosh, like, what the heck did I just watch? Why are you guys covering this? And it's like, no, like, he's like 900 something elo. This is technically not that far off from the average elo, which is around 1050. So it's like, I think there's a lot of people out there that probably have some strong sentiments about the game and can definitely improve in just making small changes, just small meaningful changes if they stick with it. Especially the deck. Oof, the deck. Yeah, I think that would be a huge first step.
Exactly. If I had any words of wisdom, I'd say, look, I know you've tried it your way, and there's some honor in doing it your way. A lot of people in our own server have cards to entire decks, to entire strategies their own way, right? There's nothing wrong. Like me, I'll still stubbornly semi FF as ports and lose matches, right? And I'm like, well, but this is what I like to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Sure.
but I'm not going on the forums advocating that port is a weak civ because it's the semi FF civ, right?
Correct.
Like, I'm saying,
yes,
I can recognize, hey, this is my personal preference because I'm an old school lazy guy who refuses to get with the times sometimes. If you're a 950 elo player, it's totally fine to come up with your own unique stuff. I learned so much sometimes casting low elo games, right? Like, different ways to think about the game. But you also, when you're going into the forums, it's like any other foundational science, really, right? Like, you have to at least know the basics before you can have a conversation.
right, absolutely, 100%. And I think that's kind of the moral of the story here. I think that it's important for us as a community to understand that, somebody's probably just making a statement and they're venting a frustration. And it's kind of on us, people who are above average elo, to kind of, come in and say, like, hey, let's speak reason into this and have that discussion. But if you are somebody who's around this elo range, you're watching our videos, thank you so much. We really appreciate you. And, you see this gameplay, maybe, take a step back and you say, like, yeah, you know what, actually, now I realize that there's definitely some things that I can be improving before I go and run and talk about balance and posting on forums and arguing that Garja is bad. I can't get over that.
Or Ungers. Ungers is a noob. 14 vil Ungers noob.
Oh, that's what he said. Ungers is a noob. That's good. That's really good. I really love it.
We love it though.
Yeah.
Keep it out there. I want to see the Juan come back. Rally someday.
I'm sure it will happen. Well,
and
anyway,
thank you, Jordy, for letting us cast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you to you both. You really appreciate it. Thank you so much for you guys watching this kind of like sort of off-colored meta commentary / cast that we had, but it was just a really fun, like, cultural moment for our small little community, and we figured we'd kind of highlight it for you. If you guys want to read those forum postings, we will have a link in the description for you to peruse and to enjoy. I'm not on the forums personally. You won't see me on there, but I got to reading and it was quite funny. Anyway, thank you so much for.
There's even more matches too, So.
Oh yeah, I did download those. But
Okay.
we'll see.
With the creator of Assertive AI, so the guy that's making quite a bit of a splash on the mod scene. So maybe if this video takes off, we can do the next game.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for listening into this cast slash, I don't know, podcast slash review. Really appreciate it, guys. If you would be so kind as to leave a like on the video, leave a comment, let us know what you think. If you hated it, let me know. Appreciate it. Maybe we don't go with something like this again. And then feel free to subscribe as well. We're getting close to that 1K mark, and we would really appreciate it if you guys are watching. Go ahead and subscribe. Thank you so much, and we will see you in the next one.